guys, what's going on? It's Ultimus. Before we start this video, sorry if I'm a little quieter than normal. There's people sleeping in my house and I don't really want to wake them up or they will be angrier than our Ultimus when he gets hangry. But that does not mean I'm not any less excited and enthralled to be bringing you this video today, so just a heads up on that one. Continuing with our overview of the class changes. As Blizzard continues to post these and put these out, I'm going to continue to record them and go over them. Today, we're going over the Priest. Starts off explaining what their thoughts behind it are. Of course, just like with the Hunter, Priests have a strong identity as spiritual practitioners who harness divine power to inspire and protect allies, heal the injured, and cure the ailed. But while this clearly holds true for holy priests, these ideas are less fundamental to discipline priest, and the ideals and beliefs of shadow priest are antithetical to those of holy priests. Despite these differences, priests of any spec share one key thing in common: unwavering faith in something from which they draw greater power. What delineates specializations is the source of that power. In Legion, we're going to explore that dichotomy in greater depth than ever through... Let's try that again. In Legion, we're going to explore that dichotomy in greater depth than ever through the gameplay for each specialization. Now, I think out of all of the classes, or I guess I should say specializations in WoW, healers seem like they've become the most convoluted. Priests themselves have been in a rough spot for a bit now. They do okay for a bit, then they kind of fall behind compared to other healing and DPS specs. It's kind of funny. I was watching one of the Q&A panels from BlizzCon, and half of the questions were priest questions. It was getting a little obnoxious. But clearly priest players feel strongly about their class, and I can understand that. As someone who's been playing a warrior for 11 years, I get that. I feel the same way towards my warrior, and as someone who just finished leveling their priest up to level 100, I can see why people are so attached to them. They are fun as all get out. So what they're doing with priests, and priests are definitely one of those other classes, and I think they're getting even more changes than hunters are. Hunters are getting, a completely revamp on one of their specs. Some major changes there as we went over in our previous video, but priests are pretty much getting an overall rework. Sorry for that break and cut there. I just got a call back from a place that I was applying at. And I'd been going back and forth with interviews for a couple weeks now, and they called to offer me a position. Wow, that's awkward timing, especially in the middle of a video about priests. So I guess this is half vlog, half priest video. I guess some background onto why this is such a big deal is I've been out of work for 3 years. As of this coming February. And having doors slammed in my face and turned down for so many positions without really any explanation why. And oh my gosh. Alright, back on track here before we get too distracted. Where were we? My goodness. Talking about priests, definitely got convoluted. There wasn't much of a difference, more or less, between each spec, and each of them were lacking, that's for sure. PvP ladders, priests are nowhere near the top. Shadow priests do okay, but they're very comp dependent. You're looking at really only playing, Shadow Cleave. Looking at really a very limited amount of comps here for Shadow Priest, and so in even Discipline doesn't really do that well, and Holy has almost no place in PvP. Of course, again, I say that not as though PvP is the only aspect of the game that is important, but of course it is one that is important to me, and I know a lot of us feel strongly about it. And one of the hardest things about getting into PvP is, okay, is your class and spec viable? That's just the bottom line. That's always one of the biggest questions you see people asking, and it's one of the most frustrating things in PvP. It's like, well, you can't really compete because you play X class and spec. There's no room for you in PvP. That's kind of a bummer. That's unfortunate, especially if you really like that class and spec, you know? It's like for years, playing Fury as a warrior wasn't even an option for serious arenas, and now you're actually seeing it on leaderboards. There's a place for it in arenas, and it's kind of cool. But with that in mind, looking now at holy priests. After spending much of their lives in temples studying ancient doctrine, preaching the tenets of their faith, and pledging their full devotion to the divine powers they follow, the most adept priests leave their houses of worship to serve on the battlefield as shepherd to flock. There they use their holy powers to bless allies and mend wounds, and while most stay behind the front lines to aid their comrades, these holy champions are also capable of smiting foes and carrying out sacred justice. They're also morally opposed to the use of shadow and void magic. Rather, they are exemplars of the incredible grace and power of the divine and the light, and even death cannot fully stop their healing capabilities. So, looking at what looks like is going to be a very heavy emphasis on big heals, nothing to do with shadow magics, very just I'm imagining they'll have a few damaging attacks that all spawn from holy damage. It wouldn't surprise me if we're seeing shadow word pain removed from holy priests. In fact, I don't even know if they still have it right now because I only play discipline and shadow on my priests. So if they don't even have shadow word pain, then that doesn't matter. But gameplay. Moving on to that aspect, given the innate purity of the spec, we want to ensure that holy priests continue to have a large repertoire of compelling healing spells. The chakra system was cumbersome, requiring additional setup to optimally use most spells and restricting how much you could fluidly shift between healing methods. We have removed it in favor of a more dynamic playstyle focused around holy words. New holy word spells are designed to feel absolutely miraculous, having huge effects balanced with long base cooldowns. Interesting. The new passive effect of Serendipity allows those long base cooldowns to be reduced, letting you use them more frequently. Finally, in keeping with the resolute beliefs of the Holy Priest, they can now make no use of shadow spells, so Smite, Holy Fire, and Holy Word Chastise are the instruments used by Holy Priests to inflict damage upon their enemies. So, glad to see I was on the same page with that when my brain was working as it's supposed to be. That's good stuff. So, emphasis on big heals, and then of course just reducing those cooldowns. I'm curious to get to that one spell they were talking about. At BlizzCon, they did announce Holy Priests are going to be the one spec and class in the game with the biggest single target heal. Essentially, the one heal is going to heal effectively 50% of a person's health pool. So a crit's going to heal for 100%. Obviously, that's going to have a little bit of a cooldown on it, but I think the principle on it is kind of cool. It gives Priest the oh crap button, kind of like Paladins have their bubble or their lay on hands. With Priest, it looks like they're getting something fairly similar. I can't imagine it'll be as long of a cooldown, but we'll see. So here's a basic look at the core combat healing abilities for Holy Priests. Heal, 2% mana, 40-yard range, 2.5 second cast. A slow but efficient spell that heals an ally for a moderate amount. We're still getting Flash Heal, 3.5% mana, 40-yard range, 1.5 second cast. A fast but expensive spell that heals an ally for a moderate amount. So I would imagine it probably heals for the same amount as heal, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but it's going to be quicker, so it's going to be a more responsive and quick spell. Very similar to how it functions now. Holy Word Serenity, 4% mana, 40-yard range, instant, 1 minute cooldown, perform a miracle, healing an ally for an absolutely massive amount, so there it is. That's not even a bad mana cost, 4% mana. I would imagine that might go up a little bit, because again, this is all subject to change. I think it's interesting, we literally have to say that every single video, but it is important to remind ourselves and the viewer as well that this stuff is all subject to change. But a 1 minute cooldown, that's intense. I almost want to say that might be too short, but then again, though, pushing 2 minutes might be too long. I don't know. We'll have to see. Seems like they're getting a pretty decent kit, though, as far as their heals go. Prayer of Healing, 8% mana, 40-yard range, 2.5 second cast. A powerful prayer that heals up to 5 injured allies within 15 yards of the target for a strong amount. Okay, so bigger mana cost there because it is an AoE heal. Prayer of Mending, 2% mana, 40-yard range, 1.5-second casted with a 10-second cooldown. Places a spell on a party or raid member that heals them for a moderate amount the next time they take damage. When the heal occurs, Prayer of Mending jumps to another party or raid member within 20 yards, jumps up to 5 times, and lasts 30 seconds after each jump. Nice little way to spread some AoE heals out there. Kind of cool. So it's kind of cool and interesting that they're getting a little bit of a hot there. So not like druids are going to be the only classes with any kind of heal over time spells. I'd be curious to see what managing this would be like and look like for a Holy Priest in raids. This actually might give Holy Priest, and I might be getting ahead of myself here, but this actually might give Holy Priest a place in raided battlegrounds. Because I know right now Mistweaver monks are kind of the best in slot go-to healer, more or less. I know they're not the best, but they're good and they're actually wanted for RBGs. So I'd be curious if this would actually give Holy Priest a place in RBGs coming up in Legion. Just kind of wondering, thinking about this. I don't really have any definite answers, obviously, but just kind of trying to mull this all out and get a picture for how this is going to play out to the best of my ability. Holy Word Sanctify, 5% mana, 40-yard range, instant, 1-minute cooldown, release Miraculous Light into the target location, healing up to 6 allies within 10 yards for a huge amount. So again, more of an emphasis on bigger heals there. There's a bug in my keyboard that was really weird. I literally saw it fall down in front of me. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but that was really weird. It's raining mosquitoes. So again, you're seeing a balance between moderate and big heals. Moderate and big heals. Bigger heals seem like they're going to be on a minute cooldown, maybe more. But this one addresses the AoE issue. I'm hoping these spells have really cool effects. Like, that's, again, we did this in our Warlords of Draenor beta coverage when we were in it. But we did a whole series going over the different classes and specs, spells, and their animations. And so this is, I think, another opportunity for some of these stuff. Like, if they want these skills to feel and look as cool as they sound, like they said, if they want this to feel miraculous, I think the spell and animations and the effects have to be spot on. So I'll be curious to see what these look like once we start getting access to actual gameplay footage. Renew, 2.5% mana, 40-yard range, instant. Fill the target with faith in the light, healing them instantly for a minor amount and then a large amount over 15 seconds. Interesting. So it's like a reverse rend, essentially. Kind of, if I'm reading that right, how rend works now for warriors, it's kind of takes for damage over time. I think rend is like 10 or 11 seconds, but then at the very end it gets a nice big burst at the end there. So yeah, okay, that's how I'm reading that right. Webpage, where you at? Serendipity, passive. When you cast Flash of Light, or Flash Heal, Flash of Light is Paladin, or heal, the cooldown of Holy Word Serenity is reduced by 6 seconds. When you cast Prayer of Healing or Prayer of Mending, the cooldown of Holy Word Sanctify is reduced by 6 seconds. So it looks like your single target smaller heals will reduce the cooldown on your single target massive heal, and your AoE smaller spells will reduce the cooldown on your big AoE. Is kind of how I'm seeing this works, which is kind of cool. When you cast Smite or Holy Fire, the cooldown of Holy Word Chastise is reduced by 6 seconds. So there's that one as well. Kind of cool. And then your Mastery is Echo of Light. Your direct healing spells heal for an additional 25% over 6 seconds. So, of course, that's with Mastery from your typical gear. So what you're looking at there, again, is just a additional hot that's placed on the target that's going to continue to heal them after your single target spells hit them. Kind of cool. Additionally, to give you an idea of how some of the talents may build upon this, here's an example of one of their Holy Spec talents. Apotheosis is an instant with a 3-minute cooldown. Enter a pure holy form for 30 seconds, increasing the effects of Serendipity by 200%. So, essentially wings for holy priests. Interesting. Okay. I'm curious what, like, the form is going to look like. You're just going to get really glowy and angelic. You're going to start levitating, get wings. I don't know. It'd be kind of cool if you suddenly look like a Valkyrie or something. I don't know how, like, lore-centric that is, but that'd be kind of cool. I don't know. Just an idea. Shadow, the one priest spec that has me the most curious. It always has, probably always will be, and especially with these changes, I'm even more intrigued, and I'm glad my priest hit 100 soon, or recently, I should say. Shadow, the light in which many priests bathe is brilliant and effervescent, granting them immense divine power, but the brightest light casts the darkest shadow, and from within this blackness a rival power dwells. Shadow priests fully embrace this opposing polarity, their faith equally resolute as their holy counterparts, but focused on shadowy magics and mental manipulation. Love it, it's terrifying. Like all priests, they dedicate much of their lives to worship, but they... Mouse, get out of the way, you're making it hard to read. But they derive their power from the void, straying dangerously close to the domain of the old gods. To truly understand such ancient and corruptive influence is to be driven mad. This is the state in which these dark priests thrive, embracing insanity and feeding off the minds of their opponents to reach terrifying new limits. What they're proposing here with priest, I like that idea. Just the idea of you're playing with that idea of going absolutely insane. You're losing your mind, and you're trying to use that in a way to actually damage and cause the same, more or less, on your enemies. I just like that idea. It's kind of cool. I've always been a big fan of the old gods in Warcraft lore. Yogg-Saron being one of my favorites. So if I get to attack people and basically act like Yogg-Saron, that's a win for me. Just throwing that out there. Gameplay. We've long alluded to the old gods' influence of Shadow Priest in their spells and abilities, and we're making that more distinct in Legion, which makes sense. Shadow Priest have always been the ones with Void Tendrils, things of that sort, just that roots them down to the ground. So I like that they're kind of expounding on this. A new resource, Insanity, provides a better fit for Shadow, having more granularity in gameplay that emphasizes the immense but fleeting power that the Void offers. Now, I like that they're dropping this out so quickly here, because at Gamescom they talked about how Shadow Priests are going to be getting a new resource system. And they told us what it was called. They told us it was called Insanity, but for all we knew, that was just a renaming of the Shadow Orbs. But what they're working with here shows us that they've actually put some thought into it, and they're actually working on a completely different resource system, which I think is cool. And I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, and every person I've talked to about it so far is, I like that they're taking chances with this. I like that they're basically hitting all the classes, and they're just going for it. They're saying, what can we do that is different? And I'm a big fan of that. I like that they're taking chances with it. Mind Blast, Shadow Word Pain, and Vampiric Touch will build insanity. Reaching maximum insanity will transform Shadow form into Void form, giving the Shadow Priest access to stronger Void magic. But it is unable to be maintained indefinitely. This should make, and this is their hope, for interesting gameplay as Shadow Priests try to maintain the height of their insanity as long as possible to prey on the minds of their enemies. So again, if this works out how I'm sure they're hoping, and how I'm hoping at least, is this will be a kind of a thing that will separate the Shadow Priest from the good Shadow Priest and the great Shadow Priest, is how long and how well they can maintain their Void form and their insanity. Again, it's one of those things where I'd be curious to see what it looks like when it actually gets in game and we see how this is going to work. I hope it's not like Balance Druids, where you have that bar swinging back and forth between the two and you have to balance that out. Since our whole goal is to get all the way over to becoming as insane as possible. But just this idea that there's going to be this skill cap to Shadow Priest is definitely intriguing, to say the least. While not under the effects of insanity, Shadow Priests continue to rely heavily on abilities that inflict sustained damage over time. Finally, having turned away from the light, Shadow Priests eschew such spells as Heal, Flash Heal, and Prayer of Mending. Power Word Shield and Shadow Mend are their primary healing tools. So, as they mentioned at BlizzCon, and we'll talk about here for a second, but Shadow Priests are no longer getting any heals except for their Power Word Shield, which is their small bubble, or their Absorb, I should say. Bubble Mix, it sounds like a paladin spell. And the Shadow Mend, which had raised a little bit of controversy. As far as I know, some Shadow Priests like being able to pop out and throw some off heals on their targets and their friends, whether it's raids or PvP. But I do like that they're going crazy with it. Like, you know what? If you're going to be a Shadow Priest, you're not messing around with the light. You're all about that Shadow and Void magic, so this is what you're getting. So with Power Word Shield and Voidman, they're not completely left out of the dark. It's a shadow joke. But it'd be interesting to see how strong those are and how well those play off and things like that. Because, I mean, will Voidman be a single target heal? Will it be not an AoE, but a hot? That is yet to be seen, unless it's down here and we haven't read it yet, but we'll get there, I suppose. But yeah, we'll see what this looks like when it actually comes out in game. Void Form is passive. When you reach 100 Insanity, you enter Void Form, transforming your Mind spells into Void spells and increasing your shadow damage by 30%. While in Void Form, you gain 2% haste every 1 second. This haste will also persist for 20 seconds after Void Form ends. Ooh. So basically, the longer you're in it, the faster your spells get, and then that will able to be sustained for 20 seconds after you're out of Void Form, which I would imagine will make it easier to get back into Void Form because you're able to cast spells faster. So I wonder if there will be a way for good Shadow Priest and really good Shadow Priest to indefinitely keep themselves in Void Form. I wonder if Blizzard would even allow that, or if they would nerf it to where as gear gets better and as player power progresses that you won't be able to. I don't know. I mean, that's interesting because if you could maintain Void Form 100% of the time, that's kind of intense. I like it. Mind Flay, 40-yard range. It's channeled still. Assault the target's mind with shadow energy, causing minor shadow damage over 3 seconds and slowing their movement speed by 50%. While in Void Form, transforms into Void Flay, which also extends a Shadow Word Pain by 3 seconds, so helping keep your dots up a little bit longer. Mind Blasted is a 40-yard range, 1.5 second cast, 9 second cooldown. Blast the target's mind with strong shadow damage, generates 15 insanity. While in Void Form, transforms into Void Blast, which has a 4.5 second cooldown, and also extends the Vampiric Touch by 3 seconds. Vampiric Touch is a 40-yard range, 1.5 second cast, a touch of darkness that causes huge shadow damage over 24 seconds. So probably going to be your bigger dot, I should say. Yeah, definitely your biggest dot. It heals the priest for each point of damage dealt. If Vampiric Touch is dispelled, the Dispeller flees in horror for 3 seconds. Each time Vampiric Touch deals damage, it generates 3 insanity. So that's kind of cool. It's definitely something you want to keep up as long as possible and as often as possible. I like that a lot of these spells are able to extend the duration of stuff, especially because, again, this is all working towards building insanity to keep you in Void Form as long as possible. Shadow Word Pain is a 40-yard range instant cast, a word of darkness that causes minor shadow damage initially, and an initial huge amount of shadow damage over, an additional huge amount of damage, doesn't say shadow damage, over 18 seconds. Each time Shadow Word Pain deals damage, it generates 3 insanity and has a 10% chance to reset the cooldown of Mind Blast. Huh. Kind of cool. Your mastery is Madness, of course, aptly named. Increase the damage and insanity generation of your Mind Blast, Shadow Word Pain, Vampiric Touch, and Shadow Word Death by 20%, with mastery from typical gear. So basically, like, all your class mastery is going to be, so far at least it seems all the classes have gone over, is it's going to be a buff to whatever your primary role and skill and source of damage is going to be. So that should be interesting. Additionally, to give you an idea of how some talents may build upon this, here's an example of one of their shadow-specific talents, Oblivion. It's an instant with a 2-minute cooldown. Let the power of the void flow through you, instantly generating 100 insanity. That's one way to get the ball rolling, just especially in an arena match. Just jump out there and go Void Form, pop that Void Form right away and just start laying the damage out there. I don't know. I mean, for burst heavy comps, I'd be curious to see. I mean, depending on what they do with rogues, I could see Shadow Priest and Rogue getting kind of crazy strong again if we're just initially looking at what's going on here. Kind of cool. Makes me really excited to try out my Shadow Priest. I really want to try them out now, which makes me less inclined to play it now so I can have a fresh start when all this stuff goes live. But anyways, discipline. Some priests pride themselves on pragmatism. They understand that light casts a shadow, that darkness is defined by light, and that true discipline stems from one's ability to balance these opposing powers in services of a greater cause. While these priests possess many holy virtues to aid their allies, they also dabble in the dark arts debilitate their enemies. Apparently that was a really hard word to read. Always exercising immense discipline to keep themselves away from the brink of insanity. Okay, alright, so they don't want to become shadow priests. Many would say that the ends justify the means. Scriptures, both virtuous and vile, should be studied and understood to protect the congregation. Gameplay. The power of absorption mechanics has created a gameplay issue for healers that we're looking to address in Legion. Disciplined priests have been so effective in their role of preventing damage that it has sometimes left other healers yearning for an opportune time to throw out a clutch heal. To alleviate that issue, we're tempering Discipline's emphasis on shields in lieu of reimagined atonement magic. Apparently, I'm having a hard time reading today. Look, my defense is I'm a warrior. I stack strength, not intellect, alright? That's where we're going with this one. Disciplined priests are now more clearly defined by the use of both holy and shadow magic, and that extends to how they function in combat. Sacrificing a portion of healing ability and having reduced focus on absorption spells, they gain a significant contribution in damage. Still filling a healer role in group content, they aim to strike a balance between healing allies and damaging enemies in a unique gameplay style. Disciplined priests have strong cooldowns with Power Word, Barrier, and Pain Suppression, along with Rapture, a new cooldown that temporarily removes the cooldown of Power Word Shield. Interesting. Here's a basic look at the core defensive and offensive combat abilities for Disciplined priests. Atonement is a passive. Plea, Power Word Shield, a Shadow Mend also apply. Atonement to your target for 15 seconds. When you deal spell damage, you instantly heal all targets affected by Atonement for 50% of the damage done. Developer comment is, healing is not split between atonements. The more allies you have Atonement on, the more total healing that a damaged spell will cause. So again, definitely encouraging you to get out there, mix it up. Don't play so passively, but be able to play pretty aggressive as a Disciplined priest. At least what they're going for. So kind of cool. I do like that they're differentiating between the two specs. They've got Holy, which is all heals. They've got Shadow, which is all damage. And they've got Discipline, which is a little bit of a mix of both. Kind of cool. Your Mastery's Absolution increases the healing transferred through Atonement by 28% with Mastery from typical gear. Defensive is Plea. It's a 1.2% mana, 40-yard range, instant cast. A quick, effective plea to heal an ally for a minor amount. So that's interesting. So I wonder if you can spam it. It looks like you can just spam it. There's no, I guess there's no cooldown on it as of right now, so that's interesting. Shadow Mend. So Disciplined Priests are getting Shadow Mend. It's 3% mana, 40-yard range, 1.5 second cast. Wrap an ally in shadows, which heals them for a large amount but at a price. The ally will take minor damage every 1 second until they have taken half that amount of total damage from all sources or leave combat. Interesting. So it heals and does a little bit of damage. That's an interesting little thing to manage there. Curious how that will work out, especially for Shadow Priests. Because if you're all about dealing damage, then aren't you going to... I guess it'll balance out somehow, but I would be concerned with how much damage this is actually going to do. Power Word Shield, 3.5% mana, 40-yard range, instant, 6-second cooldown. Shield an ally absorbing a large amount of damage lasts 15 seconds. While the shield holds, spell casting will not be delayed by damage. Huh, that's kind of cool. I like that a lot, actually. So you can easily put that on yourself and keep your... I like that a lot, actually. That's kind of cool. Prevents pushback. Power Word Radiance, a 7% mana, 40-yard range, 2.5 second cast. A burst of light heals a friendly target and their 5 nearest allies for a moderate amount and applies Atonement for 50% of its normal duration. On the offensive, you're getting Smite, which is a 0.75% mana cost. 40-yard range, 1.5 second cast. Smite an enemy for moderate holy damage. Mind Blast, interesting, so you are getting Mind Blast, 3% mana, 40-yard range, 1.5 second cast. Blast the target's mind for strong shadow damage. Penance, so we're still keeping Penance. 2.5% mana, 40-yard range, channeled with a 9-second cooldown, launches a volley of light at the target, causing huge holy damage over 2 seconds, and it is still channelable while moving, so that's good to know. Revelation is a passive. Your Smite and Mind Blast casts have a 30% chance to reduce the cooldown on Penance. Nice. And then Shadow Word Pain is a 2% mana, 40-yard range, instant cast, a Word of Darkness that causes minor shadow damage initially or instantly, then an additional huge amount over 18 seconds. So same as Shadow. Additionally, to give you an idea of how some talents may build upon this, here's an example of one of their discipline-specific talents. Grace is a passive. Increases your non-atonement healing and absorption by 30% on targets with atonement. So it's the idea that you're going to want to spread this atonement buff around on people because it's going to be able to heal more as you do more damage, and then your direct targets or your direct heals on those targets with atonement is increased because of this particular talent. Kind of cool. I do, and again, this may just be the initial shock and awe value of just new stuff, but I do like the direction that they're going. I hope they're able to pull it off to where you're able to play whatever class and spec you want, regardless of if you want a raid or PvP. Because as we said in the beginning of the video, that is one of the biggest downsides to WoW right now, is how cookie cutter it can be. You know, it's cool when your class and spec are strong, but it's a bummer if you're kind of left in the dust because you're not optimal. And you're playing with friends, and most people are willing to kind of just be okay with it, but when you get into higher end, top tier play, it's definitely more comp centric. So with that, as they're addressing a lot of these issues, these changes do look a lot of fun. Still looking forward to that Shadow Priest. I cannot express enough, because I still go back and forth on whether I want to try out an Affliction Warlock or a Shadow Priest, and I like that they seem to be differentiating Shadow Priest from Affliction Warlock now, because the running joke has always been like, I play a Shadow Priest. Oh, you mean a wannabe Affliction Warlock? Well, that might change now, so we'll see how this all balances out. But I'm looking forward to checking it out nevertheless. And I'm hoping that these changes actually go in prior to Legion launching, so that we get an idea of what to expect from a lot of these classes and changes. I know it might be a little bit difficult without the artifact weapons, since we're not getting those until Legion launches. Specifically Hunters, actually, because it'll be interesting if all these changes go live before Legion launches. Obviously, Survival Hunters aren't going to have a range weapon, so I'll be curious to see how all of that plays out. But I'm sure Blizzard's got a plan, and I am optimistic nevertheless. So that's going to do it for this video. I'm sorry for all the cutting and pasting and stuff like that. Everything kind of got crazy there for a bit when I was in the middle of recording. I guess that's just how it goes sometimes. But as always, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoyed. It definitely helps out a lot, and I greatly appreciate it. But I'll catch you next time.